Hello, welcome to the Lately in JavaScript podcast Hangout. We are again, also with Artur Sosens from Latvia that has been surviving the early weeks of his newborn son. How are you doing, Artur?
Very tired, very sleepy, but also very excited.
Okay, that's good to know because we also have several interesting topics about things going on in the JavaScript world that we are going to to start commenting right away. The first topic is about uh, something that I didn't think that would get much attention, but now with more and more browsers deprecating Flash. Um, this simple solution just got to be very important and got great attention, which is a solution for copying text from clipboard. Previously, we used to use some Flash snippet because some way a Flash snippet could access the clipboard, while in JavaScript it couldn't. We
Yeah, there
couldn't.
was no standard way to access the clipboard.
Yeah. So this simple library uh, just got the attention because if Flash is not dead, is dying, and the more people stay away from Flash, the better. So this snippet that was developed by Zeno Rocha got the attention. Um, well, I didn't look into it. I don't know what exactly it does. Is it a wrapper for different browsers to access the clipboard? Or did you look at it, Arthur?
Yeah, I'm looking actually right now, and yeah, it's uses different vendor-specific and standardized selection APIs, and uh, also the same for clipboard access. So it would work mostly only in newer browsers. It would not work in older ones because it uses the new API. But still, yeah, it's usable, and I think most of the users are upgraded to some extent, and based on what support of browsers you need, you could use it.
Yeah.
And as the fallback, as they say that they at least select the text, and on error you can provide the message like text is selected, just press Control plus C or something like that to copy it if they can't copy it through clipboard themselves.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I never got right it was why it was not possible to copy text, select the text in the past with JavaScript because actually I developed an editor library many years ago to implement what you see is what you get editor, and it use the exact command, and it, for copying it wouldn't work. Do you recall what was the reasoning for
I
not
think
working by then?
I think most of it were security issues because I think many users used to copy their passwords in the fields instead of typing them. So if you could create a library that simply
Um,
waits for something to be copied and send it to server, and most likely you would get lots of passwords from a website or something like that. I think that was at least the concern. But now with modern auto form viewers and other stuff, I don't think anyone ever copies a password anymore.
yeah, well, I don't know, but so although do it solve it in in the current browsers? Is it this selection object or something?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I see. Well, anyway, well, for whoever wants to implement a modern solution for copying text, this is the solution that you can use. And let me just select the window here. So moving on with the next topic, uh, let's comment on an article by Jeff Atwood, which was one of the founders of Stack Overflow. He wrote an article about the state of JavaScript on Android in 2015 is poor. Well, poor when compared with JavaScript on iOS. Basically, it says the fastest mobile phone, which refers to Samsung Galaxy S6, would run some benchmark at 400 milliseconds while running it on the latest iPhones and the iPad. It would run much faster. Well, I don't know if this is a good reference. I'm not sure what is the benchmark script that they are trying to evaluate the performance. Uh, I don't know. Well, it's something that it usually does not concern me, but because I'm not comparing, I don't even have an iPhone to start comparing. I don't
You have an
see.
Android then?
Yes, but I don't look much at how fast JavaScript is running on mobiles because when you access, for instance, a page, you evaluate the whole experience, not just JavaScript by itself. So if a page is slow, we don't know if it is JavaScript or some other aspect of the way the page is being loaded, like images or other libraries
True,
or
but with current trend of transcompiling everything from C into JavaScript, you can compile
yeah.
quite a massive libraries to convert videos, and as we commented in many podcasts. So, if you want to perform such task on a device that poorly runs JavaScript, then it would be a very long task to complete.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe there is a reason for this. I don't know if the article suggests any reason. I could not notice anything, but okay. Uh, now that Google has probably uh, paid attention to this, they probably will look into that and see what they can do. There are some charts here that I'm not sure what they mean. Mm, because they mention Kraken and then Google Octane V2,
That also probably browser things to test.
or could be JavaScript engines that are used
Yeah.
on the mobile phones. Well, anyway, this is something interesting, as probably we'll see some reaction from Google in the near future, and or not. I don't know. Okay, so moving on to the next topic, we have actually several articles that get back again to the nice things that we can get when finally JavaScript has the await async and await constructs as widely implemented solution for running asynchronous code. First, there is this article in the Microsoft MSDN site, and it shows how things are used to be done without using async and await.
Promise and await.
It talks also about promises. For me, promise is just a way to structure your code differently, but the pain is there, is still there. And finally, below, they talk about how it will look like when async and await will be available. And I was trying to.
This is a great example. Actually, how well you can see how the same code changes into smaller and smaller with every new iteration. See, first we're using callbacks, then promises, and lastly await keyword becomes really more compact and more readable. But probably await keyboard would not be usable everywhere because it's basically I don't know. Does it really stop the execution until the callback completes, right? So if
no, it doesn't stop the execution. It's well, the way I understand this, the await will resume when the function is done, when it returns. I think returning in this context is probably calling a promise or something like that. I'm not sure about how it works, but
okay, so just more a syntactical thing to be easier to
well, in reality, for instance, here this code below the await line will only run when this function finally is done. So it's different than having to put some promises or some callbacks here.
Yes, of course.
And internally, how this happens is that all these asynchronous languages have something called the event loop. In the event loop, it is like polling different sections of code that is being run asynchronously to see if it is done, if it is ready. And if it is ready, it can do something, move on to another asynchronous code. So if it is not ready, like for instance, if you call this function and it is waiting for something asynchronous to finish, it will move on to another thing that is in a sort of a queue of asynchronous things to be executed.
Yeah, so if you have something in set timeout or set interval, it still will be executing while waiting for the callback.
Yes, maybe not necessarily set timeout. Set timeout.
Just as example, because it's something that runs in parallel with.
Yeah, because set timeout will actually would not do anything except checking if the time has passed. And now for other more complex operations, like for instance, let's see if the server responded to an AJAX request. it will do that inside the event loop. And when it is done, it somehow the engine will flag that it can resume to something else. In this case, it's to move on to the next statement. So there is some integration with a JavaScript execution engine to sort of suspend the state of execution of this section of code and then resume it when this is done. That's the way I understand it. Well,
it's actually quite interesting. It would it would allow us to implement lots of new patterns. One thing that I wanted to mention, that get JSON async function in this case would still need to return a promise, because await only works with promises, right?
I think yes, because it has to return something, and I think the return value is probably a promise, because it or not, I don't know, because if you look here, you see that it calls parse JSON with the result. So I think it will actually return some value, which in this case will be a JSON string.
Promise probably would get some value or something like that.
Yeah, I think using promises was the proposed solution before. So, but since this is ECMAScript 7, I think it will be different.
How would you go about if you have a bunch of functions which you want to execute asynchronously and only execute some next task after all of them complete? A wait keyword wouldn't really help you in that case.
Well, I don't know. This is something that is already inside a function that was declared to be async. So by the time that you execute async, this is sort of starting a thread, a parallel thread. Yeah. It is not a parallel thread, because it will not create its own context. If there is a really blocking function in the middle, it will block everything, not just the current section of code.
Yeah, because JavaScript is single-threaded in its own.
Yeah, the runtime engines to be single-threaded. So I think this async function, we will put this in a sort of a queue of things that have to be executed when the CPU is available for executing this code. But I think you can have multiple asynchronous sections being run in parallel. Okay. And the event loop manager will decide when it's time to run each of the things. That's the way I got it. I'm still not certain, because this is a bit magic. Well, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that it is available. But this, as we mentioned before, this is the same solution that is being implemented by the Facebook Eck language, which is a sort of evolution of PHP with the async and await keywords. So they have the same keywords. And as we mentioned also in the PHP podcast, they are also thinking of having something like that in PHP, but it will be complicated. I don't know, because it requires messing up with lots of parts of the PHP engine. But if PHP does not have it, it will be delayed when compared to other languages. So I think for the survival of the popularity of PHP, it is important. Anyway, here we are talking about be some time until this is available in all browsers. Meanwhile, I found other articles also talking about the sync and the await keywords. Again, talking about the how good it will be.
Yeah, you can
Finally,
really see the excitement in everyone's
uh,
blogs.
yeah, all this is something for the future. Everybody is excited, and and well, they are saying that eventually you can already implement this using Babel. I'm not sure. Did you try Babel or?
Yeah, well, I think we commented a couple of podcasts ago about it.
Yeah.
It's basically
But are you
non-compiled.
using it regularly
No,
or
no,
no?
no, 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 not using
Just
it.
your colleagues.
But it basically, as this article said, that you can do also a sync and a wait in the Babel. So if you want to experiment with them and play with them, you can do it.
Well, if they can use a transpiler to make it run on, at least, would it run in ECMAScript 5? I don't know. You have no idea.
No.
Well, they probably do something like emulating an event loop that will take care of this management of what portions of the section to run. It's probably something very interesting to study, probably a hack. I don't know. And there is also another article here telling that Microsoft has already enabled a sync and await in the Edge preview build. Edge, it's the code name for Internet Explorer 10. They're just trying to get rid of the bad name.
Yeah, and they're trying to win the developers back with enabling early features like a sync and await. So it might be
Yeah,
working.
I don't know. I don't know what is in their minds anyway. I think this is interesting because it will push forward the other implementations of JavaScript uh, to implement this and not wait for future releases. Okay, we've talked a lot about the sync and the wait, so let's move on to another topic. So the next topic is related with, if I can push the screen share button, it will help. Engine script, which is basically a JavaScript implementation developed by the Nginx project, and basically they have developed their own JavaScript implementation rather than relying on some other engine that exists. It seems that they use it mostly to parse configuration, right?
Yeah, so basically instead of simply having configuration, you can have a little more complex setup without parsing, adding, rerouting stuff by providing some JavaScripts. But it's not a server-side script like Node.js. It's just to do some configuration and more advanced works specifically for an Nginx server.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting because they say that they would not use some other implementation because they have more control over it.
Yeah,
And
for example, there is a MongoDB database, and MongoDB also uses JavaScript to run some more complex queries and aggregations and stuff that you want to do. So it's simple, a new appliance for JavaScript in some
yeah,
specific case.
well, they certainly have their own reasons, and they also mentioned the fact that they will use JavaScript just to run small configuration scripts, and that's it. And so they don't need things like garbage collection or anything
or
more
date or
complex.
math or anything. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's not a regular JavaScript, it's just a small subset of it for what they need.
Yeah, this is just interesting, and just another example that JavaScript is everywhere.
Yeah, it's interesting because they could go with any language they would want, with using Go or using some their own domain specific language or anything, but it just shows that JavaScript has something to it, so that they would better took it, adapt it, and use it rather than using something else.
Yes, that's true. Well, moving on with the next topic, now talking about an approach for splitting long-running tasks so they do not hang. So there is this library. It says an ECMAScript 6 developed functional API that prevents long-running scripts from blocking a JavaScript thread. So if you have some CPU-intensive code that you 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 need to run with Chunkify, you can sort of split the execution. So uh, I think by the end of each chunk, it will release the CPU at least for a while. So any other task that needs the CPU will be given a chance to use the CPU. And they have several functions in this library, like using generators. Each is an iterator, I think. A map reduce, they also have an implementation, because these are operations that can apply on um, large arrays. Interval, I'm not sure if this. Oh, it's still dealing with arrays, right?
Yeah, I also
Well, anyway,
you could see an example here. So there is some animation. The circle is jumping here and there, and by hovering the button, they perform some kind of calculations on the background, like map, reduce each range, and animation is still running normally without being interrupted. But if we disable Chunkify and try to run some operations, probably my computer is too. Oh yeah, I can see the stutter anyway, but
yeah.
the idea is that it really helps to. It seems to really help to the main event loop is not so cloaked, and the animation still keeps running normally if Chunkified enabled, and those operations are performed with Chunkified.
Well, I'm not sure. How can I test this? Oh, it's running a map operation while
Yeah,
running the animation.
yeah,
I can sense that my computer fan is accelerating, as in it's sucking a lot of CPU. Oh, but it is done. So if I remove the chunkified and run the map operation, it will simply stop the animation, because
yeah,
it is not giving enough CPU for the.
exactly.
This is just a way to be fair with parallel tasks that may be running on the same thread. Right. So when it ends, it will just release the CPU for whoever wants to to. I mean, whatever task needs to do. In this case, it would be the animation. And okay, so let's move on with another topic. I don't know. I'm going to take it here so it doesn't suck my CPU doing a silly animation.
True, true. I also closed it.
Yeah. So moving on with the next topic. In this case, is just to mention. I think we already mentioned this in the past, but now it seems to be official
Yeah,
that
well,
Google
we
is
mentioned it in the
deprecating.
past that Google can. Oh, yeah, probably I'm jumping ahead of topic, but well, we all know that Google can run JavaScript to render their page as you want,
Yeah.
as you intended it to, because they can even check if it's mobile friendly, if it scales and stuff like that, so they can run everything and render everything and know everything. And yeah, now it's a logical step that previously there were some ways to allow Google to index your web page when you're using AJAX requests through some schemes like replacing your hashtags with escaped fragment, and then you would present that content to them and stuff like that. Very complicated stuff. And now they seem to be able to do it just on their own without any help needed from
Yeah,
us.
because the previous scheme is what it was sort of complicated because you have to create artificial pages that take some parameters and you have to have more work to make the servers generate those pages when in reality the pages are generated on the browser side uh, with a regular JavaScript execution could be loading some excerpts in the page with the Ajax or something that updates the page with some other information not necessarily from Ajax. So so
Yeah, and currently you can simply use the API HTML API for push states histories, and what is interesting is yeah, Google can render a web page, they can execute JavaScript, and they can do everything they like. What about other search engines? What about Yahoo, Bing?
yeah.
How
Well, the
do they
question
index?
it's what is the share of those search engines? Is it relevant for your market in
Is it
general?
relevant for your market?
Unfortunately, no, because Google it's like 90% of
Wow.
or
Okay.
more. The but they say that in the United States the share of Bing and Yahoo is much higher. So if you have sites specific for United States, you probably have more people using um, other search engines, especially now that Firefox sort of actually they signed a deal with was it Yahoo this time? I'm not sure, but I think it was Yahoo. And well, anyway, the matter here is that basically, if you are using escaped fragments, never mind. When they said deprecating this, don't bother implementing this because uh, they will not be caring anymore about those pages. I don't know if they will index every page with letters and a hash in the front. Um, I don't know how this will work, and well, it probably will be interesting to see if there is any follow up because when they say deprecation, it doesn't mean that they stop caring about what you did in the past to make certain page fragments indexable. Okay, moving on with the next topic. There is an article. I don't know if this is probably premature to know to talk about because it is again about WebAssembly, which is something that is being defined, I think. So there is an article called Seven Things about you need to know about WebAssembly.
That is actually the best article about WebAssembly that I have found. It answered almost all questions I had about WebAssembly, and
Yeah,
including what WebAssembly actually is. So it's interpreted to be as a bytecode for browsers. So the main idea is that you can develop something in any language and environment that you want that would be then compiled into WebAssembly and could be run by a browser.
yeah.
So
Now,
it's not JavaScript only to create some libraries for a browser or games or anything. You
yeah.
can create in every
And
language that could be compiled to WebAssembly.
so, to whom is this interesting? To developers of other languages?
Yeah, basically, if you don't like JavaScript and like something other, like C++, you could probably develop something there and then put it in WebAssembly. Yeah, well, there are also other usages as many of users using AppScript, and it probably be a much easier way to achieve the same.
Yeah,
Uh, and there were also other use cases mentioned, like some functionalities not really supported,
right.
but could be introduced through
Right. So
WebAssembly.
they mentioned the first fact is that WebAssembly is not the end of JavaScript, like as if whoever has JavaScript code is not going to migrate to some other language just because you have WebAssembly.
Yeah,
And
of course not.
also because it's not yet something available. Uh, WebAssembly is being developed by the teams behind ASM JS and
Portable national client.
native clients, right?
Native, yeah. So basically, it's a Mozilla Foundation and Google working together.
Yeah. I think this can be interesting for those that want to protect the JavaScript of their pages because when they compile it into WebAssembly, it will be sort of unreadable. Or
Yeah, like
even if you can disassemble it, you probably cannot do much with
true.
it.
Without the source maps, you can't
Yeah.
really understand much, probably.
WebAssembly is backwards compatible. What do you mean?
Well, they have a polyfill or some kind of a plugin. Basically, if you are familiar with Unity Web Player, then it will the backwards compatible would be something like that that you install an external plugin and would be able to run with WebAssembly in other browsers.
Yeah. So it will still run. WebAssembly does not look like CPU assembly. Okay, it's it looks more like bytecode. That's what I expect.
Compiled, probably, but yeah, you can see examples
Yeah, there's
in
some
code.
example here of WebAssembly statements. For me, this is a JavaScript dialect.
Yeah, of
That's what.
course, they would need to be in JavaScript to be run in browser, I think.
Yeah. So that's how they will implement it backwards compatible with some wrapper library, probably, I think. And again, WebAssembly will extend beyond the features required by JavaScript. So
Yeah,
it will
what they want
not
to say is that it would improve lots of stuff, uh, like I think that was mentioned.
things that are not used in JavaScript.
Uh, no, I mean it's like loading time and parsing time would be much faster for WebAssembly than for JavaScript code.
Okay. Well, I think it's great.
And,
And
and, and as you see, there are also features like it would have the full threading support and zero cost exceptions, coroutines and stuff like that. So
well,
I don't know.
basically, it will be another JavaScript-like language,
Yeah,
just meant to be to run faster because it seems to have types that have a specific byte width.
yeah,
Yeah, so bit width, I mean. And they have functions specific for those uh, types. So if you need a small integer, you will not use a large integer just
yeah. But that's exactly
because you
what
have
Awesome.js
integer.
Awesome.js is doing also. It's
Yeah.
all the base of optimization.
And okay, moving on. Source maps will allow you to easily debug and compile code. Yeah,
No problem.
what are source maps? Or
Do you remember we had an article about Uglify, which minifies the file, but then you want to debug it, then you have to provide the source map, so it maps what
oh,
is
I
the
see.
variable name, function name, and stuff
Now
like
I
that.
remember. So it is the original source.
Yeah,
So you can single step the original source while executing
compiled version.
the compiled version. Okay. You do not need to wait for WebAssembly to be ready
Yeah, well, that
because
basically means that you can jump on Awesome.js and native
yeah,
clients right now because they would be based on assembly would be based on decent technology either way.
yeah, okay. Well, this is interesting because it, as you said, this clarifies um, certain doubts of what WebAssembly will be and how good it will be or not, depending on the point of view. So moving on to the next topic, I wanted to mention this library called LJSON, which is basically the regular JSON, but it now supports one type, which is some executable function. So
Yeah,
you
that
can
was
put
really
a
interesting
closure
to
there.
hear.
Uh, sorry. Meanwhile, okay. Let me increase the font if possible. Here we have a JSON object, and one of the elements is actually
A function.
a function. I don't know if this is a good idea because, well, I don't know also what are the restrictions on the syntax. Maybe
Probably,
it's a function declaration that will never execute unless you want to.
yeah, probably also not supported for native functions, only for user-defined browser-defined functions.
Or at
And
least maybe it will not execute anything when you load it, when you
yeah,
parse
no,
it.
of course not. You probably have to evaluate it, I think, to run it.
Yes, in this case, yes, but imagine if this mail function is like a dog, something that sends your cookies to some
Yeah, I understand the
hacker
concern.
server.
Of course, yeah, it could not be some arbitrary user-entered function.
Yeah, it
And
probably needs to be a closure declaration, I think.
yeah, but as you know, today we learned in PHP podcast that we can archive files with JSON. So why not provide JSON for functions?
Yes, that's the idea here. And well, I don't know what is the In this case, it's very dumb, the example, because it will return if you access this value here, it will return an object. So it could well be replaced by another object rather than returning it. I suppose this more complicated case would do some evaluation. I don't know what are the restrictions. And the author also mentioned there is a port of this library to PHP. So if you want to have something like this in PHP, I'm not remembering any use case by which this would be interesting, but okay, maybe it has some uses that are not obvious to me. Any uses that you can remember?
Well, from the same article that you showed, there was one use case defined that. Do you remember there was a game where you learned the code by writing functions to do something with characters?
Yeah.
Well, so you could use it for something like that to write a function, then JSONize it, send it to server, and execute or something like that. Of course, you would need to have more control over it of what it does and stuff like that.
Yes, that's why I think this is just for clear closure definitions. You cannot put some arbitrary code in there. Well, I don't know. I have to see an example in practice. Okay, now moving on to one last topic, which is about Node.js that is now in version 5.0.0. Is it my impression, or they are moving too fast with the versions? I think they have a new major version every month.
Yeah, there was a huge stagnation in Node.js, and that's why they separated to IO.js, which had much more versions and progression, and now they have merged back. So I think some of the trend from releasing lots of versions from IO.js have now moved on to the Node.js, and it's happening. They are releasing faster versions than we can try off.
And if you look at the change log, you see a lot of bug fixes and breaking. I suppose breaking means backwards incompatible changes, right?
Yes, there are actually too many of them as I see, but after reading through them, they are breaking compatible changes in some cases that which I think I have not used any of them. So for me, I think nothing of that would break backwards
Yeah.
compatibility. But yeah, in some cases it will if you're using something.
This probably will lead for people that do not pay attention so much to each new version, because if they break many things every month, if you're trying to catch up with what are the changes, next month it will be different. And oh well,
You
it
can
could
say
be hard.
similar thing is happening with PHP, and that could be also one of the reason of PHP adoption is quite slow. Probably in Node.js it would be similar.
Well, I don't know, because the last major version of PHP is like 10 years ago, I think. Was it like PHP 5.0? They have minor releases in between.
Yeah, that's why I also think that releasing version 4 and then version 5 is a little too much.
Yes,
It
I think
should
they are
be,
trying to follow the trend of the browsers, that they release one Chrome version every month.
yeah, that's why you have now 42, 43 version. I don't know which Chrome
So
version it is now.
I think that the version numbers start losing meaning with this this approach. And well,
46.
yeah, Oh, we are in Node 47. What does it
Yeah,
fly?
so it's not so much.
It's even hard for us to look at these changes and highlight any because we see lots of fixes and breaking changes. Well, do you use Node.js regularly? No.
Yeah, in my current job, I basically code in Node.js.
So, what version are you using?
Currently, I think we are on some old 1.12 version, but due to some changes to Ubuntu 15.10, we need to move at least to Node.js 4. So we are now in process of testing.
Oh, so you are seeing, dealing with the changes.
Yeah.
I don't envy you because that's a pain.
No, it's
Your code
mostly
was working before. Why is it not working now?
yeah, it's mostly actually not actual Node.js changes, while rather updating dependencies that would use the newest Node.js version, but those
Oh,
dependencies again change their APIs and so on and so on. So
that's the trouble of depending so much on external libraries.
yeah,
You cannot. You have to follow the updates, or else you lose something. And if you follow the updates, well, you also spend a lot of time. So it's a sort of a pain. I think. Well, my opinion. I don't know how you are dealing with it. It's part of a job, right?
yeah,
Okay, great. Well, with this, we practically ended this podcast. I'd like to thank you again, Arthur, for coming. And as we can see, there is always plenty of new topics about JavaScript and new things that are going on. So, on my behalf, that is all for now. Bye.
right.